Hello, and welcome to the Lean Into Artcast, a show where a few visual storytellers and folks who make a few different things like to unbox something that is interesting to us and find a way that is, let's see, really practical and detailed and really chew on the topic, and then we take another angle at it and kind of get a little bit more philosophical and wonder why and that kind of thing. So my name is Rob Stenzinger, and with me tonight are two guest hosts. And because normally I'd be here with Jerzy Drozd, comic artist and teaching artist. He's off on adventures. He's under some hashtag on the internet, like comic caravan. Thank you. So that voice. With me on camera to my right is guest host Kate Stenzinger. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. Fun to be back again this week.
Right on. Yeah, we had you last week. And on the other side of the internet is our other host. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here too.
Yeah, Jesse Kauffman. Well, so let's see. Let's get to know you two a little bit better. So Kate, we do another podcast together,
mm-hmm.
and you do some blogging and stuff, right? Tell us about
it. Yeah, I'm Kate Stenzinger, and I do some blogging at Art and Science Punks. Wow, I couldn't spit that out tonight. Yeah, and we do the podcast, and I do some crafting and a lot of work with little kids.
Awesome. And Jesse, where are you from?
Well, I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan,
mm-hmm.
and I am the coalition director for a youth substance abuse prevention coalition in Chelsea, Michigan. It's called the SRSLY Coalition, SRSLY, which is text language for seriously. The word seriously.
So that's really cool. So that program, I think we've talked about on the podcast. We were chatting about like rapid iterative collaboration. I'm forgetting which episode number that was. But like you and the other hosts of the podcast, Jerzy Drozd, work on the SRSLY project together.
Yep, that's how I've gotten roped into the Lean and Art cast. Happily
awesome.
Roped in.
And we're glad to have you here. And well, I guess that's our topic is what comes to mind right now, which it's really related to this kind of work. We're not going through the same exact angle as we chatted before, because this is more about like using creative projects for advocacy and maybe taking a few different angles on that, thinking about examples we've seen, thinking about things that we've done, or how we consider breaking that down on either side of the conversation, thinking about reaching out to artists or being an artist reaching out to organizations. So
yeah, and I, having been on here before and not taken a very linear path and explaining why I'm here, what I do, I'm ready to try again and make more sense hopefully this time, in terms of kind of how I work with Jerzy and what that project looks like. Yeah, because I started at like 3/4 way through and then jump back and then jump forward and then jump back. And
Jesse, I gotta say, having listened to a lot of Lean Into Art, that's kind of the way it's supposed to go. So you did great. You can try linear, but this audience, I think, has to be used to circular and forward and back.
Totally. Well, it helps us get to know things. And I thought you were picking on an interesting place to start. Let's just refresh our memory because, well, you've got this SRSLY project, and you mentioned wanting to sort of set a fresh look at that. So what is that project about, and then what led you to doing a comic and then ending up getting into public events related to it?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Seriously is a youth substance abuse prevention coalition, which essentially is a community group who's working together to reduce youth substance use and abuse, or delay the age of first use, because the earlier that adolescents with developing brains use substances, the greater the likelihood that they will engage in other high-risk behavior, become addicted, those kind of things. So it can be a topic that can feel pretty serious at times. I mean, that's kind of the tongue-in-cheek name of our coalition, is Seriously Coalition. We kind of frame it that it's a serious topic, but we're not going to take ourselves too seriously. And so well before I ever started there, the group that kind of formed the coalition really felt like, this is a serious topic, but people are not going to want to stick around and participate if it just feels like a downer all the time. And we want this to really feel like a good community engagement coalition. And so there was going to be a focus on positivity and fun and youth empowerment. And so that really kind of guides, I mean, we use public health data, local community data, but that and those other principles really guide the work of the coalition. So we do some educational pieces around substance use and abuse with adolescents, but most of what we do is about helping create a community that supports youth in making their own choices and helping them know that to choose to not use substances is a totally acceptable, healthy, good choice. We're not trying to make that choice for them. We're trying to help them grow up and live in an environment that supports their choice to not use substances. So what does that look like? That looks like social norm campaigns where we use local data to help kids understand that most kids aren't using, and in Chelsea that's the case. Most kids are not using alcohol or tobacco or marijuana, other drugs. And so by, getting some of those messages out there, it helps kids to feel like they can make their own choice. And it takes the bite out of that, a little bit of that peer pressure component. We do a lot of fun substance-free events. We have a pretty big New Year's Eve party every year that's, upward 500 people in the community. We've done that 9 years. This will be our 10th year, this New Year's Eve. Actually, tonight we started this season of our Seriously Cinema series. It's free outdoor movies. So youth and families can come out to free outdoor movies to enjoy all summer long. After there's a festival in Chelsea at the downtown, has a lot of music and art out in the street called Sounds and Sights. And so after Sounds and Sights ends, we show a free outdoor movie for families, and our youth members pick those movies. And so there's a lot about youth picking those things, right? They plan the New Year's Eve party.
It's very empowering, Jesse. I mean, it's really kind of taking the message that you just, or the structure you just described, and then putting it into practice, even like within the organizational events, right? So giving them choice, putting them in charge, having them some accountability or responsibility for making those choices and making the program successful.
Absolutely. So one of the ways that we kind of formalize that, we have an adult steering committee that focuses on capacity, sustainability of the coalition. And then we have the youth steering committee that is focused on implementation. They plan a lot of the events and activities. They represent the coalition pretty regularly and do presentations statewide. Actually, nationally, they've been presenting on behalf of Seriously. It's really exciting to see what happens with youth when you say, we believe in you, like we trust you with this thing, go, and see what happens. And so that's been a really fun component of working with Seriously.
That's fantastic. I have a million questions just from my background in child development, but the youth board you're talking about how many kids sit on that and kind of what age ranges?
Mm-hmm. So because we're primary prevention, we're really focused on adolescents age 10 to 15, because that is the age where generally before they start to really have to answer whether or not they're going to use substances. Sure. Most 10-year-olds are not being offered some of those things. So we try and build those build skills and a sense of community and belonging and connection in those early ages. And so the Youth Steering Committee is anyone from 10 years, which is about 5th grade, up through high school. And by the time they get to high school, and especially later high school, they're functioning at more of the leadership role than like a participant role. And so we have, we actually keep our coalition like membership kind of loose so that people can feel like they can come and go and don't feel bound by it. Like they can feel responsible for it, but not bound by it. And so we have kids that junior year becomes a academically very challenging year, and they'll disappear and they'll come back for their senior year, or they'll have a season where they're playing field hockey and they disappear for that season and they reemerge. And we try and keep it loose so that kids feel like they are always welcome and they can come back, but we're not going to be like, where were you?
Sure.
Because that's, who wants that, right? And so,
right, who wants that? And again, you're giving them the responsibility and the accountability, right? So come make decisions, make your choices. And when you need to make a choice to focus on your academics or focus on a sport or whatever else is a job, whatever's going on in their lives, you know, that's a great kind of welcoming and trusting way to have it.
Right. And so we end up with probably about 18 to 20 kids who are on the Youth Steering Committee, like that have attended a meeting within the year or said that they wanted to be on it. But a typical meeting doesn't have that many people because it, you know, just the different schedules and such. But it's a lot of fun to work with them and see what they do. Yeah, this last February we were in DC for a conference, and not only did they attend this conference, they presented at it about youth engagement to a room filled with adults who were tearfully saying, "You've given me hope for our community back home. I want to sneak you in my suitcase." I was like, "No, don't do that."
Don't do that.
Not that funny.
Yes, exactly. I'm the adult responsible for getting these kids home. Please don't. But then they also met with their members of Congress to talk about these issues in their community and present it to them. And so it, you know, as much as we can get those kids out in those spaces to represent themselves and the issues in their community, those are the things that we want to do.
So Jesse, we'll get to the art and the art kind of connection in a second, but I just want to follow this a little further. So they're presenting to adults and they're presenting to members of Congress on the substance abuse kind of issues.
Yeah. And so,
because how do you get them from just like the fun and the empowerment to feeling empowered, I guess, or feeling
they're carrying
ready
out the mission. They're like, they've joined the.
But I think there's a step in there that I want to know more about. Like, I'm being taught good decision makings. I'm being taught that adults trust me to make good decisions. But now I have to translate that to drug and alcohol and substance use. And then how do I go talk to, you know, Congress about that?
So we attend national trainings. I mean, there's kind of a national organization called the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, which we're members of that, and they have conferences where they train youth. But we have a middle school in-service called the Youth Empowerment Solutions, where we talk to kids about community assets, liabilities, what does it look like to be a leader. They meet with their local community leaders to do like a Q&A with them, and then they plan community improvement projects that we actually write for a grant and have dollars that are like we pass to them and say, this is your budget for this is the amount of money you have.
That's
and
awesome.
They're like, ooh. and so giving them those opportunities, they step up and they're like, I need to know these things. They help us with our social norming campaigns, so they know that local data to say, well, what's the message that makes sense here? What would my friends hear out of this? We're putting them in front of the local Rotary Club and the Kiwanis Club and the school board and any group, right, that'll listen. And they've practiced, right? They've done those presentations. Sure. And so when it comes time to meet with members of Congress, I'm shocked at how like yeah, my name's this, I'm in this grade, I've been involved in Seriously for this many years. You know, I'm involved because this is really important to me and I've seen it affect my community in this way. And well, you know, this fact about substance use in our community. And I mean, I work with them. I totally trust them. I think they're brilliant, wonderful kids. But every time I'm still like, whoa, you know, I mean, it just, it's saying we trust you, you know,
Yeah.
how can we equip you as best as possible? Let us know if we can help you in this way. And then they just run, and it's brilliant. It's wonderful. I mean, I need to stop talking because it'll just keep going.
That's fantastic. And I think it's a great program, and it sounds like you guys do a really wonderful job. But I do think we should pivot and talk a little bit about the Art Connection,
Sure.
because you guys have done some very cool comic work and workshops. How did that start?
Sure. So because talking about substance abuse is not always appropriate for all age levels, we started talking as a coalition, how do we become accessible? Like, everything we have is lime green, and so we've created this brand that's pretty strong in the community, you know, like, but how do we help younger kids become aware of Seriously without talking a lot about substances? How do they understand that this is an important part of our sense of place in the community, like our sense of belonging, and help them feel comfortable that when they age up, they know who we are, they want to be involved, they know that their community cares about them. And so we were working with a marketing company at the time who said, well, you know, maybe we should do a comic book related to you know, some messages that are protective, pro-social messages, but have nothing to do with substances specifically. And Jerzy Drozd was the artist in residence at the Chelsea District Library. And so when that conversation happened, this is a benefit of working in a coalition, lots of different people with perspectives. Yeah. Make the team. And the director of the library says, well, we have this artist in residence who might be interested in doing that. And they proposed it to Jerzy, and Jerzy said, create comics that have a helpful moral for kids.
I know, right? Like, he won the lottery that day.
Yeah, and I don't, you know, and we can get more into that. Like, I don't know how artist in residency, right? Like, I don't know what all he was hoping to get out of that, or you know, if that felt like a stretch for him or not, I don't know. But you know, from my perspective, I'm grateful he decided to do that because it made that connection. And so we created a second grade book. This was a coloring book. It's just about hand washing, and it was very well received. And part of the last podcast, when we talked about rapid iterative collaboration, we talked about the process of like getting school administrators to give feedback on some of the character designs he created, getting kids to give feedback, talking about the readability. He submits rough drafts to us, and me as a contact person, I get it to the rest of the coalition members. They give the feedback, and we work through what that'll look like. And so it is it's a wonderful collaboration. Second grade book was successful. We got a grant to do the third grade book, which was then in full color. And then we were kind of like, okay, this is really going well. What is this going to look like? And we had a lot of excitement about it, but we didn't know where all the funding for it was going to come from. And we wrote for a Michigan Council of Arts and Cultural Affairs grant, and were awarded that. And then asked Jerzy to make 3 comic books in one year, in like a matter of months. And he did it because he's fantastic. And so so he did that. We were able to catch our breath and kind of not be last minute on like, well, we're going to get a comic. What's the kind of story? Hurry, let's get this thing out. And instead, it gave us some breathing room. We had the next couple books out. We applied for the same grant again, got it, and expanded into Jersey, offering a comics workshop for middle schoolers who learn about, you know, making comics. And then they, at the end of that workshop, they submit what the stories they've created, and then we put it in an anthology and print that. And so that's then available at the middle school. We do a book signing lunch where the kids are eating pizza and complaining about their carpal tunnel as they sign every copy that I can possibly get them to. And within the last year, because Jerzy helps organize the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, he said, would you think, you know, Seriously would like to have a table? And I said, absolutely. And the kids come and they sign copies there. They talk about creating a comic book. They meet other creators. This year, one of the 8th grade girls in the program did a quick draw with Katie Shanahan, which was so fun to
neat.
watch. Like it's just that as an event was a great connecting point for them to be involved. We've been really fortunate. We had additional grant funds. We have mascots of one of the villains and two of the characters from the hero team that we use for the book launches, and we had at a TUCAF in the last 2 years. And I don't know if I should talk, well, it's probably fine. I've submitted for another grant because the middle schoolers who have finished, they've gone all 3 years in the workshop, were saying, so you guys have this at the high school, right? And I was like, no, we don't. And they're like, well, you got to figure that out. And so I wrote for a grant and hope, fingers crossed that we'll get it and we can offer it at the high school, some sort of variation of it. So that's it just continues to grow, I think, because of how well it's connecting with kids, what it enables them to do, the other, things that it connects them to. And it's all part of that protective piece, right? It's that fun, it's that positivity, it's empowering them, asking for their creative voice and then sharing it and telling them that we're proud of them, connecting them to other adults in their community who care about them. Jerzy does a wonderful job of teaching kids and engaging with them and letting them know through teaching them about comics and the way he interacts with them that he cares about them and values them, right? And
absolutely. He's an incredible teacher and facilitator.
And so whenever you have adults that are not parents, right, or aunt or uncle or grandma or grandpa that are like, we care about you, right? You belong in this community. We're watching you and care about you. We believe in you. It's so protective for kids, right? For them to feel like they belong in that way. And so it fits really well for the coalition's work.
It sounds like it's been successful and that you've really been able to grow it, and you've been incredibly successful in your grant writing as well. Do you have good outcomes data, or what do you think it is that, the grants kind of keep coming in?
So we trying to figure out how much of the story I go into. We do pre and post surveys on students that take the workshop, talk about how confident they are in their comics making, what are the questions we ask? How confident were you in making comics? How likely would you take it again? How likely are you to refer to a friend? Do adults in your community care about your voice, artistic voice? Does your school care about your success or something? And another question. And so we've been using that for the workshop. We made an attempt to do kind of a full evaluation of the comics because they've been distributed in Chelsea for 6-7 years now. We're at 7 years now. That's not right. 6 years. Somehow we've got 7 books out of 6 years. We've got an aggressive schedule. That's what that tells me. But anyway, it's been in Chelsea and other we've made it so that it can be replicated for other school districts. And so 2 other school districts were signing on to start introducing the comic books. And so we were trying to use that as an opportunity to evaluate the program. And we had 2 other school districts that initially were interested in us having some kind of comparable public health pamphlet that they would read versus the comics, and then we would survey them after the fact. Unfortunately, lots of different circumstances did not amount to what we had hoped. So I think we're in the process of kind of retooling to figure out how can we effectively get some of that data outside of parents saying, oh, we love it, and my kids keeps reading it and asking if they've shared it with their friends. And we did a little bit of focus grouping. I've heard you talk about it, Rob, so I know. I know. But for what we're doing, right? Like for what we're doing, I need to have something, right? And so anything that gets closer to having some sort of feedback is I think
Well, and those grant folks, just speaking from experience, they like numbers, and they like to see the different ways you can measure it. But this, again, it sounds like such an incredible program. I'm curious a little bit of the development of the content. So like you're working with Jerzy, and he's not here, so we'll just talk about him. But you're working with them. You said the first coloring book was pro-social, hand washing was the topic. How do you come up with the other topics?
So that's a discussion with school administrators. So the first one is about hand washing. The second one is, the way that we essentially frame it, I wasn't working there for the first one, so I don't know what that conversation was like. But for subsequent ones, we essentially go to the school district with Jerzy and say, what if you had a message that you'd like to give to these third graders, but then the third graders after them and third graders after them, like what would you want a third grade message that's coming from a different group, right, that supports your work as an educator? What would that message be? And so third grade was about adults supporting you, looking to parents as a support and a help for you. The fourth grade book was about if you see something, say something related to bullying and kind of some cyberbullying stuff. The fifth grade book, the administrator says, I've got some kids that are not kids that would typically get drawn into some problematic behavior, but I think there's this kind of cool kid mentality that's kind of pulling them in. And so that one was about kind of like being true to yourself despite other people saying like, well, if you do this, you'll be cool, kind of that peer pressure, changing yourself to accommodate. When we get to middle school, sixth grade is when they go to sixth grade camp. So we did a story about that takes place at the sixth grade camp location, like the sign says Howell Nature Center, which is where Chelsea kids go to camp. And it's about kind of like supporting each other to overcome fears, because they do rock walls and it's a lot of team building stuff related to that. So it's kind of like supporting each other to overcome obstacles. The seventh grade book is the first year that students can be in school sanctioned sports. So it has kind of a teamwork, working as a team is greater than one person kind of showboating, or like the villain gets all the powers of his team, and so he's gonna rule the world, and Captain seriously tries to face off against him, say like, I've got a one-on-one. I think he was challenged to one-on-one, and then it becomes clear that Monster Arc, the main villain, has more powers than he should have, and local kids, their cartoon likeness is in the book, and they're like, wait a minute, he doesn't have all those powers, he's cheating. And they were like, we're empowered to be the refs and label the whistle and all this other stuff. And
cool.
So it's about teamwork. And then the eighth grade book was about making your own decisions, kind of stepping into your own right, and that you get a lot of messages about who from around you that might be telling you who you should be, not in a peer pressure sense necessarily, but like the adults in your community and others who are trying to tell you what you should be like. And unless it's your own choice, it doesn't really matter. Like, it needs to be your own decision to be who you're going to be. And so so those were all topics that we got from either a teacher or building principal or the counselor for the grade level. And they're sitting there with Jerzy, and we're workshopping those topics to see what that looks like. So we workshopped the ninth grade book idea, and Jerzy's going to work on the creative piece of that this summer, and we're going to release it in the fall. And I'm going to be out of my mind giggling about it because I cannot believe we're making it to high school from like second grade.
That's
up into I cannot believe it. So so that's kind of how that works. Those topics come up is
now doing the work that you do. I'm sorry, I'm not even letting you talk. But doing
Pop's got the night off.
That's right. You doing the work that you do and coming up in your 7 books in, have you had to do or have the conversation with the artist. And again, in this case, it's Jerzy, and I know his style and I know his passion for youth. But have you had to kind of have the conversation that, hey, maybe this section of the story goes too far or isn't the right message? Or how do you kind of fine tune or dial in that message when you have, again, from an advocacy position, something that you're really trying to accomplish?
Sure. So we work very closely on a lot of things with the school district. So I think there's a good relationship built on some trust there. Actually, it happened in the most recent book that Jerzy put in. He had Dame Lady Cat, I think, say the word "damn," and
Jerzy did.
Well, I mean, it's going to be a powerful storytelling moment.
It was,
and,
yeah, I thought so.
So hold on. Before we get into this, I think we should take a break.
Oh, I'm sorry. I always forget.
Don't apologize, please.
Okay.
It just, I just wanted to mention some sponsors of this show, and this is going to be like a general thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon.com. You're wondering, like, well, what's Patreon? Patreon sounds a lot like patron. And well, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's like this recurring way to support a project that you believe in. Lean Into Art is one of the projects on patreon.com. If you go to patreon.com/leanintoart, you can see the kinds of things that we share there, where we post the regular podcasts. We post something just for our paying patrons, which that could be as little as $1 a month. It's awesome. It sends a signal to us that people are believing in what we're making. And that's awesome, because what we do then is once a month, we do this post called Extra Lean. And it's because it's only for the patrons, you get to see it and listen to this bonus podcast. And we like to do a prompt and say, hey, here's something we're thinking about. Join us. And we're, only those who are in this group can chat about it, or just bring up whatever else is on your mind. It's like, hey, this is your sort of open mic to have like a nice safe place to noodle on some things that we encourage you to do. So that's we are deeply honored, super grateful that folks have chosen to support us there. Patreon.com/leanintoart. You can join in with them, and your support means a lot to us. Thank you to all of our patrons. So I did that quick pause there because, little teaser, hold on for the, little advertisement. And then, okay, now circling back, you were getting into a bit of the, well, how does this work with the artist? And I just want to step back a little bit more, right? So we got the question of
but Rob,
how does this
Jerzy
work
put
with
the
the
word
artist?
"damn" in the book.
I know. It's a teaser. It's called a teaser and a cliffhanger. It was like, okay, so our eldest daughter finally, we were watching a couple episodes of Dragon Ball, and none of the entertainment she's been exposed to uses cliffhangers, not really. And so she was, getting very interested and invested, seeing, well, okay, these two characters are finally gonna, they're gonna fight in a tournament, right? Okay, let's see what happens. And then they ended the episode
next time,
and she literally
Dragon
did
Ball.
oh, come on.
It's brutal.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of mean. You're feeling that. That's an open question that's not going to get answered until later. And even then, they may string you along. Storytellers. So yeah, I'm guilty of that. And okay. This was like the initial part of the chat. We're going through all sorts of awesome experiences that you've had, Jesse, and with your organization and working with the different constituents and sort of some of the things you think about and deal with, which I think is really important when you consider, like, okay, hey, I'm an artist and I'm curious about working with this kind of organization. What does that look like? Because what is that? Is it, like, if I open up that box, it's not just one entity, one person, one group, it's a whole bunch. So I thought that was a fantastic like tour of all sorts of things that you know you can be dealing with. And you know, when you choose to serve this kind of when you choose to be an advocate through creative projects, and those are being you know, funded and enabled through an organization, right? So is that pretty fair to say? That was a good
that
tour
was
of
a
that?
good summary.
So here we are talking about, we've got an artist, our character being, you know, the missing, you know, host on the podcast, right? Jerzy Drost. And he's like, you know what? I'm a storyteller. I'm an artist. I have some ideas, and I know I've got a mechanism to help you accomplish your meaning. And it's something controversial, and it's even a little bit out of my character, because, you know, Jerzy saying "damn" is not the, you know, everyday one on the hour Jerzy, right? I mean, so here we are.
So Jesse, tell me what happened.
Where'd this come from? And
so in fact, I mean, even more than that, Dame Lady Cat, who was designed after his cat Maggie is saying the word. So he and I, so when we he talked with me about it when we were talking about the story, and he was kind of, I think, submitting some thumbnail stuff to say, like, this is what I'm thinking about this, and we talked about the why from a storytelling perspective, and I said that's fine by me. Obviously, well, we'll have to talk about it with some other folks too to get where they are with that. And so I had talked to some of my coworkers about it, and they had some discomfort, and we were kind of doing a little bit of the dance of like, well, what about this and that, and like talking about movie ratings and what kids are exposed to and what is really like technically PG or PG-13 and language and all that kind of stuff, for some sort of point of reference.
TV these days, I mean, they're getting away with a whole nother set of language that when I was a kid, you never saw on network television.
Right. Yeah. And this is, I mean, these are 8th graders, right? And so, so we had that conversation, and they were pushing back on it, and I was like, well, I'm gonna ask the school principal, because he's gonna be the one that gets the calls. And so I pass it to him, right? And he's reading it, and he's like, oh, this is great. This is really great. That's not going to be in there. This is really good. I like that. And it was just like, it was a no, right? And I was like, okay, it's out. And Jerzy was like, yep, I'm fine with it too. And so I think it was understanding the roles that we all serve, right? And the weight of what is in that book and who's going to have to initially answer for it is on the school principal, right? Because he is allowing us to go into the school and hand a copy to every child for free. It's different than like, there's a pile in the office if you want to stop by. Like, we are going into classes and saying, hey, we're this community group. We care about you. This is a book. Author's here if you want to talk to them about it, like ask questions, which is a really neat thing to be able to offer these kids, that they get to meet the creator too. And so it's one of those things where you just kind of like, you know what your specific role is, and who's like the weight of specific responsibilities are on different people. And so we very dearly value the partnership we have with the school district. So much of what we do could not happen without their partnership and collaboration. And so it was like, okay, that's it. As quickly as he said, that's not going to be in there, I was like, you're right, it's not. I mean, I just felt like that.
It's not going to be a conversation.
Right. And I think that it's taken a while. I mean, I wasn't there at the beginning, and when we last kind of talked about this project, Jerzy talked about them, needing to build trust between him as artist and the school and Seriously as a group, and what all this means. And I think in some ways it's helped, because I kind of work as an intermediary between Jerzy and the other partners in the coalition. And so I can kind of like collect all that feedback and make it kind of more succinct, and take out, not so effective communication styles sometimes. I mean,
Sure.
And which I'm guilty of, but if I'm thinking about like, I'm compiling all this feedback, well, then I'm going to put extra thought to make sure that it's clear and makes sense and is helpful in some way. So that just, you know, it slows down the process a little bit, but I think it makes it more intentional and kind of, I don't know, hopefully makes it work well together. But I grew up reading comics too, so like it's easy for me to get into that mode of, yeah, I understand, let's do it. Great.
You do seem to be representing a variety of concerns and sort of knitting them together, yeah, and bridging different perspectives. Almost kind of that's a you know, a form of creative collaboration, a lot like we discussed with you in the prior episode you were on. But I'm wondering if is that, are you the place, like, or someone wearing that kind of hat, like that's like you in different organizations that, you know, not that there's no, you know, there's no one like Jesse, right? But like, you know, there's people who have to wear these hats, right? That how could like an artist who maybe doesn't have your background or familiarity with all of your constituents, maybe they'll get there through some meetings and discussions partially, but like, there could be a lot of challenge dealing with these serious topics, and how do you treat them skillfully, and like being constructive and inclusive. Is that like where does that come from? Is it partially someone like you, like who's being an editor, an advisor, or is that like, does the artist have to come with some of that too?
Yeah. In the Jerzy definitely participates in that process because he's in those meetings where we're talking with school staff. In terms of how to initially encounter it, you know, not all. So I have seen some of the comics that substance abuse prevention initiatives have put out.
Okay.
They're not always great, right? In fact, some of my coworkers were cleaning out a different office, and they were like, "You like comics? Here's one." And it was a Marvel one that from the probably late 90s, early 2000s, that was about a kid who ran track, who was getting, you know, starting to smoke cigarettes, I think, and he was getting involved in some sort of organized crime stuff. And of course, Spider-Man had to be there, and because of his star power, and it just had this dubious feel, because then it has Luke Cage and Storm, who none of those three really would work together. It just had this dubious, like, introducing characters who were people of color to try and, you know, help this person of color athlete. It just is so heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And heavy-handed and insensitive, and so it's not even, in my mind, probably wasn't a very effective message, right? And so
kids are going to see right through all that,
right? Yeah. And so or like, I don't know, Johnny, I don't know, we got Tobacco Tommy coming into town, right? And it's like, sure. You know, so I think one of the reasons why our project has worked well is because it's a much more gentle touch on some of those topics. It's still very present, but it is more about also storytelling other pieces. So having said all that, as a creator, there are lots of groups who are doing the work that we're doing. Mm-hmm. I cannot guarantee that they're all going to be in a spot that they're ready to say, yes, like general pro-social protective messages are enough for us to spend the time and energy to do this. Mm-hmm. They might, right? This is an open invitation that if creators out there are having connections with these people and they're like, don't have a sense of, I'm so happy to be like, this is the part where like this project and the advocacy related to it is from so far an endless spring of enthusiasm for me, that if they want to contact me, they're very welcome to, and I'm happy to help act as some sort of liaison to talk with these other groups to try and help foster that. Because I can appreciate the fact that they're just not all there, right? Like not every group is functioned the same way, but there are lots of public health related, social justice related groups that want to improve their communities and could probably benefit from having creators involved in some way with that messaging, right? To help reach a wider audience or make a message more palatable or understandable. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Sometimes it's challenge finding funding. Sometimes it's challenge finding who, how all the pieces fit together. I mean, for us, the age group, Jerzy being teaching artist, it fits very well, right? Like, he is very approachable to kids. He's kind of a local celebrity in Chelsea because he goes with us to all these school visits. He does very engaging presentations when he does like art demo kind of stuff. Like, it just, I don't know. Yeah. Someday when he's like, I'm out, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So
okay. So it's not about just saying that, well, if we dissect the incredible project that you're part of and all the components can be sort of dehydrated and just add water anywhere in the world. I definitely would want to say that because there's a lot of, sparkle and magic in the team you have, clearly. Right. And I imagine it extends beyond you and Jerzy as well.
Well, and I have another example. I worked for an organization that did advocacy around children's mental health. And we worked with a man who was a dance teacher and an incredible performer and theater performer. And we ended up putting together a play that the kids around children's mental health themes and topics, but again, a lighter touch and with a lot of inclusive messaging, and worked with a lot of different parts of the community again to do casting and bring kids in to actually perform. And that's been going on for 15 years now. Oh, wow. But it was because of kind of that, similar to what you guys are doing, that one connection where we came to know an artist who was passionate about the work we were doing. And it was a good fit to kind of bring his work with our message. So, and they're still doing it today. I haven't been with that organization for a while, but it's wonderful to see that continue.
That's really cool. So, in terms of creators, what they can do, I mean, I suppose they can look for local groups that are doing the things that they want to happen in their community, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's a separate conversation about compensation and how groups, because some groups might not be aware of what they're saying when they say things that are offensive.
Absolutely.
About exposure and all that kind of stuff, and some of it will be asking for creators to be patient with non-creative in our artistic sense people who don't understand what they're saying, right? And to be patient with them and help educate them, being willing to educate them, and at the same time looking for if that same group is teachable, right? If they're a teachable group, that they'll hear that boundary set, right? Or that and they react and respond to it in a way that means, oh, okay, there's probably some collaboration potential here. For our grant, for the Michigan Council of Arts and Cultural Affairs grant, it is very much so about artists, right? And arts in the community. And so it's clear you're not taking advantage of artists, right? And so a lot of the grants like that are out there, and I'm sure there are ones outside of Michigan that, in other communities that could be finding those kind of things. It's about valuing creators. And so helping people understand that, I think, is also important.
This sounds like a good signal to look for. So if you're seeking an organization that seems to stand for things that you believe in and whatnot, there's, I guess, more than one signal to look for. It's not just the topic and the kinds of work they're currently doing, but it's also how do they work, right? It's almost like one way I like to think of what you were describing, Jesse, is are you and neither either could serve fine, different circumstances, but you could be working with an organization, or you could be working for an organization, right? Where the for tends to denote a more prescriptive arrangement. We need exactly this made. Okay, you made this, here's money, or whatever, right? Versus the other one is like, well, this is our problem, let's figure it out together, and we want, this rough thing made, let's figure it out. So interesting. What other things are we curious to explore about?
Well, I was thinking that I would just do a little tease, and then I would let you do your next business piece.
Take care of the business. Okay.
Yeah. So here's my tease. I want to tell a condom story when we come back.
Fair enough.
Awesome.
Get awkward. So
awesome.
That I'm somehow going to relate to the rest of this.
Yeah, I believe you, and
not
I believe
just
in
like
you, so.
Random condom story.
I know. Yes, but yet still,
that's great.
That's an excellent thing to have us be curious about. Well, we take a moment to thank the other sponsors of Lean Into Art, and well, it happens to be myself and Jerzy. So through our other projects, you can be supporting Lean Into Art. And let's see here. Boop-a-doop. I'm going to pull this up. I am not King Smooth guy when it comes to handling the two things. Here we go. Here's Jerzy Jerome's project, Boulder and Fleet, which is at boulderandfleet.com. And it's a comic about a bird and a bear who are adventurers for hire, and they find different troubles and challenges, and in their world, which is a world of cute animals wearing people clothes, doing awesome stuff of high action, yet interesting enough, the big strong character, the bear, is a pacifist. He's super powerful and capable and could stop a cave in, yet is also not interested in channeling that power. So it's an interesting set of things that are just straight from the mind of Jerzy Droz. And if you're into Jerzy's work, I mean, you just got to be reading this and support him through go to boulderandfleet.com, and there's a link, or you can just jump to patreon.com/Jerzy. And then there's another thing that actually Kate was co-game designer on. And that's this little game called This Panda Needs You. Do you want to describe it, Kate?
This panda does need you.
Yeah.
This Panda Needs You is a very fun puzzle type game. It's a block stacking game, really designed with the early math skills in mind. So it's got colors and shapes, and it's really shape sorting. And the panda's there and has built this beautiful block tower, and then the mean wind comes and knocks it down, and the panda needs us to help put the block tower back the way it was. This panda needs you.
Yeah, and so you can help this panda through, but the iTunes App Store. You can pick it up for your iPhone and iPad, and learn more about it at this-panda.com. And then there are other things that Jerzy and I have put together in the form of downloadable workshops. And you can learn more about those at leanintoart.com/workshops. There's a variety of things that help you chew on storytelling matters. Things like, maybe you're putting out a webcomic and you need to or want to just change the user interface. I hypothesize that, you're a storyteller. You actually have UI design skills, and I've got a workshop on that. Jerzy has a couple of amazing workshops on sound design. He's super passionate, very thoughtful about making sound visual. That's called FATAM. All sorts of good stuff out there at leanintoart.com/workshops. And then, of course, if you've already supported us through those other things, and you just want to spread the word about this because you're supporting it, you're like, hey, more people need to hear about it. That'd be awesome. You can do that through iTunes. just show your support, do a vote, do a rating, or give us a comment, and you can do that as well via YouTube. You could, if you see this video out there, give it a thumbs up. It helps us, be found by other folks and make the community bigger.
Ow.
All right, you're right, Kate.
I'm okay.
Well, there was this teaser you put out there.
Yeah.
And okay, we're gonna unite this topic
stories
with your story. All right.
So Jesse, I loved hearing how you guys talked through your topics and figured out what all of these different age group stories would be. And that's fascinating. But I kept thinking about a lot of the work, Rob, that you've talked about around design thinking and how do you really solve difficult problems. And so when I was thinking about that, when you were talking, I remembered, and this is research from probably, I'm going to say 10, 15 years ago. But I can recall being in a presentation and hearing some educators talk about a successful program that they had run, where they had been doing these safe sex programs. And this was out east. It was targeted at high school students out east. I can't remember exactly where, but it was all around getting them to use condoms for safe sex. And they had tried campaign after campaign. They had handed out condoms. They had done all this stuff. They had, put up big posters and the things that we typically do when we're, trying to get kids to change behavior. And nothing was working. So they started doing what I will call like early design workshops, or early human-centered design pieces, where they did focus groups and they got kids in the room and they were talking to them about their sex behaviors. And what they found out was that the kids that were using condoms, the main difference between that group and the other group was that the kids using condoms talked to their partners about safe sex before having sex. And so they changed their marketing. It wasn't about use condoms. It was about talk about safe sex with your partner. And so they completely changed their messaging, and this was how they made an impact. So my point is that, when you're trying to answer those hard problems, and we talked a bit about how do you know what messaging to do, there's another tool in the toolbox that could be used around, that type of thinking.
That's funny, because you could be very sensitive. You could be skillful, craft a message that is inclusive, but it's the wrong message.
Right. Happens all the time in marketing, but this was, I think, a little more related to, and it was an example I knew.
All right.
Well, one of the, we've experienced that. And when we had some of our social, some of the social norm messaging that we've put out, we've gotten some pushback for probably lots of different reasons. But one of the ways that we decided to kind of engage that, I would love to be able to claim that it was our idea even, but a high schooler contacted us to say, I want to run a comparison survey to the one that you use from the Michigan Department of Education, that with a smaller sample in my school. Can I talk to you about the survey that you run, how you got this social norm message? Was not involved in seriously, said like, I support the mission that you do, but I just don't understand how you got the numbers that you did, and wanted to run her own survey. And she learned, she was in the AP statistics class. She learned a lot about the challenges of survey science and response rates and all sorts of good stuff. And actually, in the end, got numbers similar to ours. And she also worked for the paper, so she wanted to write an article about it. But then the AP stats teacher invited us as a coalition to go talk to the class about our survey. It's not actually our survey, it's the Michigan Department of Education survey, but it's the one that we reference and use. And so we had wonderful conversation with them about that, and have since gone back. And so the process that we're kind of trying to work toward is bringing the data, our data sets, to the AP advanced placement statistics class, so that they can analyze that data, think about what messages make sense and that their peers would want to hear, and then pass that to another class, like a writing for publications class, that can then generate the actual like message, published, printed thing for their peers. And it gets at that youth empowerment piece. It gets at that, like, how are we going to make sure that what is being said is sticks, right, and is relevant to kids. And so giving them that voice makes all the difference. It absolutely does.
Wow, I love that story. That's fantastic. I mean, you guys really have some amazing work going on.
How are you spreading this, right? I mean, so how the approach, I mean, maybe I'm just super naive and not tuned in enough to the kinds of work that you're doing, Jesse, but is there like the way, are there I don't know, conferences or something where how your organization works, you're sharing that?
Yeah. So, there are national conferences. Again, it's the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, CADCA for short. They have a couple of national conferences that they do where they offer training for youth, but then also youth have an opportunity to present on the work that they're doing. Part of it, though, is finding, because the kids in the AP Stats class were not kids who are involved in our coalition. Like, you might have one or two, but they're kids who care about the statistics, right? Like, they want to do well in their class. They want to learn that piece. And it's finding those, here we're getting this advocacy piece where we're going to get pumped about, is that it's finding those opportunities where, oh, there's a class that wants to talk about statistics. It fits within their curriculum. Oh, we have local data that we want to have them use and process, and
that's
then
relevant to
peers.
Their lives.
That is totally relevant to their lives. Okay, let's make that connection. And so I have found empowering youth through positivity and fun is something that is like my own personal priority, right? Like, even if I wasn't working where I am, those would be principles that I would want to be upholding in my life. Those are things that I want to see in the world. And so when we think about advocacy, I think a big part of it is that, like, we all, this might be a little simplistic, but it motivates me, so whatever, deal. We all are advocating for something in the way that we function, right? Like, the way that we function on a daily basis, we're advocating for something, right? There's beauty in the world. We're either embracing it or ignoring it, right? We're either creating it or destroying it, right? Like, you're doing something, you're responding or not responding, but inaction, right, is still a response. And so in my mind, what are the things that I really care about, that I want to see more in this world? Go to that, do that. And so youth empowerment and fun are those things. And that has morphed, thankfully, into, like, this comics project as a kid who grew up reading comics and did not, I mean, and I'm talking 25 years of reading comics. I did not meet a comic creator until I met Jerzy 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
that's
right?
That's a heck of a first comic creator to meet. I thought it was magic. I thought they just came out of a computer and they just existed, right? And that's not true. I knew that people actually created them, but not having met someone, they might as well have been a computer, right? Sure. And so that limited access for me, I think that disconnect in some ways made comics inaccessible to me. Even though I consumed them, it made creating comics inaccessible to me in a way that I am just now figuring out how I'm going to engage that as an adult that is silly busy in life with two small children and going through graduate programs. You know, I did mine and my wife did hers, and we were both working full time, and it just is like, life is busy. But only within the last couple of years, having met Jerzy, working with him,
for the last nearly 6 years now, and going to A2CAF last year and meeting other people that were like him, and creating comics was accessible and welcoming and meaningful, and that you were invited to do that, even if you weren't that skilled in your art forms yet. That for me was a profound experience. And so I was already like ready to go advocating for kids and connecting them to comics. That sucker just like lit a fire is not dramatic enough of an illustration for me. And so I feel like I'm regularly doing a file search while all the other programs are running. There's a file search for how am I empowering kids and connecting them to comics, and how am I creating that fun? Like that is running there. And so as I'm doing all sorts of other things in life and I run into an opportunity, I'm like, whoop, jump in, get there, right? Let's do this, right? And so when kids are saying, when are you going to do this at the high school? I'm like, note, all these kids have said interest. Like I'm reframing that into like, it is because of demand, consumer demand for this thing. We need to have it. I need to write for a grant for it. I need to start talking to all the administrators and see, like, when I have those conversations about what are we doing next year, I'm going to say, you have kids coming in that want a comics workshop. I talked to the art teacher. The art teacher's like, oh, we have tons of kids who would love to do comics. Like they would just, if you do something here at the high school, I promise you, you will have no problem finding kids. And so I'm just like, the wheels are turning. How do I make this happen? How do I make this happen? Because there is that intrinsic thing within me that believes so strongly in that, cares about it, wants to be a part of that momentum of what is the world that I want to see, right?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I'm going to stop and let you respond to that.
No, I think it's a fantastic message, and I think just like a really good kind of umbrella for what we just spent time talking about. And I love your mission. I love what you're working on.
Yeah, that was awesome, Jesse. You're essentially the beautiful rally cry of there's beauty in the world. You can choose to embrace it or ignore it, and that what you've shared helps point to a bajillion different ideas as sort of thoughts and approaches, and then also like literal resources that I think, let's find ways to share what we just made in this podcast. And so other organizations like you, who knows, they could hear it. And also I think the artists, because that's our hope here, is to try to bridge these different perspectives and, spread more of the, more connections. The advocates and those who, the advocates, did I just make up a word?
You did.
Advocates.
I like it though.
Well, it's beautiful.
Wow. Okay. So not that I wouldn't want to spend more time on the moment of that strange word, but what I was looking to put the fine point on is there's a lot of potential between these audiences. And I think that there are different creative disciplines that we just need to bring them together. There are people who don't think they're creative, that they just got to get together with the right team. And wouldn't you know it, they have tons of things to say and are an incredibly important voice in work. And also that work can lead to other, there's so many awesome things in this, and I can't wait to get this shared and try to find some resources in the show notes that point to a lot of what we chatted about. Anyway, I'm kind of overwhelmed with Jesse's happy energy.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you interpreted it that way. I think for another piece, I'm going to travel back into my rant lane, is that because I did not have access to creators myself, I did not feel like creating comics was accessible. And I have been spending the last, 9 months or so trying to teach myself how to draw, even though as a child I loved to draw. It's this weird thing where I've loved comics, but I wasn't creating them, right? And I now feel like that's accessible in a way that it wasn't before. But now I want to figure out how to draw, because I don't that's not a thing that I've been doing, even though I loved it as a kid. And even into early adolescence, for some reason that I fell off that horse and didn't get back on it. And now I'm like rusty and busy, but I want to make that, so I'm not making comics right now. Right. But I have this other thing that I can be doing to make comics. I make comics. I'm just not the artistic piece of that. Right. And so I think that I think when you get connected to people and have conversations and listen to them, you can find out these pieces where they might actually fit with the thing that you're working on. And it's not just to take advantage of them. I am getting deep, profound fulfillment out of this work that I'm doing because it's stuff that I have always wanted. And in some ways didn't even know that I wanted. And now I get connected to someone that can help me do those things. And I am full of nonsense. I spent all of A2CAF crying because all these little kids, my like nieces and nephews came, and I had friends that brought their kids, and they're all walking up with their little books asking for a cartoonist to sign it. And I'm having them, like, I'm just over there at the table trying to be cool about how meaningful watching all this happen is. And that I think when kids get connected to creators in that way, I feel like I didn't, right? And I feel like maybe some things would be different if I had. And so, you know, part of my advocacy bundle is getting kids to meet those creators. And I keep saying, I mean, I will tell the team at A2CAF, use me, please, in any way you can, because this thing that's happening in my community that my kids are going to grow up being able to have access to, I want that to happen. I want it to continue to grow and be strong and get access to other kids. Whatever I can do. Like, there are people out there who are waiting to find the thing that they can connect in that way, in a meaningful way, and say, use me, please. I want this thing to happen. I believe in it.
Absolutely. And I know we've been to A2CAF a number of times, and Rob, you've gone several years, and it's such an incredible event. And for the kids, it's amazing. And the artists that come and really give their time and their energy.
Well, and it's about this, it has this inclusivity. And that's, I mean, there's a couple of themes that maybe if we're, sort of, wrapping up and doing our sign off kind of thing there, that there's a lot of theme of inclusivity, exploration. You don't know exactly where it's going to lead, but those connections, you get some, you will learn and be affected and probably evolve your mission. I mean, a lot like, any complex creative endeavor, a lot like, you mentioned using the design thinking as a discipline to help with unify the group and figure out what's important to work on. That's kind of how this works. Like, so we didn't share like, oh, well, this is the 5 tips to, get connected, artists connected to advocacy organizations, doing your thing. And then there's this whole other big angle that maybe we'll have to revisit in the future, which is individuals doing this, not organizations. And then, I don't know, that might be fun to explore too, when people share their personal journeys that have an impact.
Absolutely.
In this space. So not to exclude that kind of work in our conversation, just, there's a lot to dig into with, connecting. You believe in a thing, you want to help out. Also, like, we're not talking about just the, this can't be a business endeavor. We've Jesse described the grant funding and all that kind of work that goes on to, support and pay artists. And that's, this can be a viable pursuit as well. Not only one that is, you're merging like what you find meaningful also with, hopefully funding. But this is a tough one to wrap up. I just,
so much we could talk about.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Thanks for letting me sit in again.
Yes, I am very happy.
And
very happy to participate in this.
Awesome. And, if we would love to have you back again as well. So that extends to both of you. I mean, my gosh, you guys are awesome. I barely did anything this episode. So thank you. And Jerzy will be back next week. And,
are all four of us going to be on next week?
I think we're just going to collect
just keep
a new member every week. No,
sold.
All right. Well, that's not the worst idea, but schedules. So, this will get posted at leanintoart.com. And again, super appreciate both of your time. Jesse, you mentioned, people could reach out to you. Where can you be found on the internet?
So I'm on, if you dare, I'm on Twitter at Jesse Kauffman. It's just my name, JSSEKAUFFMAN, on Twitter. And that would be probably the easiest place to access me. Follower beware. We talked about this last time. I'm not skilled at Twitter. I don't do anything in 140 characters. Like, it's follow at your own risk, but you can definitely reach out to me if you want any assistance or help with this. Like I said, right now I am a deep vein of enthusiasm for this. And so strike while the iron's hot, because some point, there are life cycles to things, and not that I won't believe in it, but there might be a time where I'm at capacity and I can't help in that way anymore. So you can reach me there, and I'm on Instagram. It's Dogpile, which is whatever. And the O of dog is a 0, and the is it the I or the L? I think the L is 1.
All right, awesome. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes, so that can help disambiguate the numbers in Dogpile. No problem.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so people can reach you there.
And
awesome.
I'm at Kate Stenzinger on Twitter.
Awesome. And also Art Science Punks.
Yep, you can always find me at Art and Science Punks.
Awesome. And I have been Rob Stenzinger on Twitter. So once again, thank you. And I will slowly push a button on a thing. Not super smooth at that. And then say, okay, bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening. All right. Well, thanks for those of you tuned into the stream. We're about to sign off.
Good night.